I gotta wait till this gets going.
I'm going to close my door here.
Okay. Well, hello everyone. Today on our Blue Island 101, we're going to be talking about basically the staff that works on the second floor at City Hall. Tonight with us is Alderman Tom Hawley of the 4th Ward and Alderman Bill Fahrenwald of the 4th Ward. I'm going to start out with the mayor's office. Basically, the mayor is the chief executive officer or the CEO of the city. He performs the duties prescribed by law, including municipal ordinances, and is required to see that the laws and ordinances are faithfully executed. The mayor's term is 4 years. One of the other things is the mayor's required to give the council information concerning the affairs of the city. The mayor is also a member of the corporate authority, but generally only presides over the city council meetings in the board's deliberations. The mayor will cast a vote in the event of a tie when matters are brought before the city council. And the mayor, if you need a majority of the city council, will be that deciding factor to go over the majority. Now, as a CEO of the city, he's responsible for seeing that all laws and ordinances are enforced. And the mayor is, in effect, the administrative superior of all officers and employees other than the alderman. Also, one of the jobs the mayor has is he's the liquor commissioner. He can enact laws, liquor laws, and enforce the appropriate provisions of the act and local ordinances relating to the subject of liquor. And that's kind of playing an important role right now when we're going through this COVID crisis right now, where we're trying to make sure that businesses are in compliance. So that's basically the mayor's role. Bill, you want to talk about the legislative body or the city council?
Sure, because that's where I am as an alderman. Thanks, Randy. And I note before we get too much further into this that we are going to lay out some information here about how the city functions tonight. That's Blue Island 101. But we also, probably more importantly, would like to have an opportunity to answer any questions you have. And I guess, Randy, you said folks can submit questions on YouTube if they're watching that way.
As absolutely, I have plenty of room on my computer to see all the questions that might come around. So absolutely, YouTube or Zoom.
Yeah, and if you're with us on Zoom, you can type into the chat box any questions or comments that you have, and we'll try to deal with all those before we're done tonight. So anyway, yes, about the legislative body, that is the city council, as we know it here. Other cities call it different things, board of trustees, whatever, but we have a city council in Blue Island. And it is composed of now currently 14 aldermen. And it is the repository of all municipal powers that have not been specifically designated to other officers or members of the city. And the language of the municipal code is such that in most cases, the powers granted to the city council are exercised by what's called the corporate authorities. And that's kind of legal speak for the mayor and the aldermen. We comprise the corporate authorities of the city. We are going to, as an important note about the structure of the city council, is that we are going to be changing in April when there is an election. Currently, there are 7 wards in the city, and there are 2 aldermen in each ward, and there are 14 aldermen. That's going to change to 1 alderman per ward, so there will be 7 aldermen. Obviously, still the mayor, still the treasurer, and still the clerk as elected positions. And those of us who are on council now, I think, are mostly looking forward to that, because I think it's going to streamline things 14 people. It's an unusually large number, especially for a city of our size. It's, lots of things in Blue Island are having to do with our long and glorious history. So that we were going to get a chance to, I think, streamline things between 7 aldermen. I believe there will be, better, more streamlined communications, and able to probably act more rapidly, and just to communicate probably more easily amongst one another within city council meetings. So that, I think, is a good change. And the aldermen kind of serve as primarily the citizens ombudsman or advocate within the city. If you're running into a problem with city services and you're not getting satisfactory action or attention at the city level, aldermen can act on your, can be, intercede on your behalf. And then, of course, more, as importantly, is that we just, are responsible for making sure that the city is being run responsibly and efficiently, and to also look at any need for changes in local ordinances, which actually, for various reasons, happens fairly frequently. There's often kind of minor changes, but as conditions change, we need to kind of perfect things. So that's another duty that we have as aldermen. So that's kind of a quick look at what the alderman and the city council does.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So Tom, one of the other functions in the city hall on the second floor is the finance department. Would you like to talk about that for us a little bit, please?
The finance department, as you probably can guess, handles all the finances of the city. And it oversees the planning, organizing, and directing of the financial activities, ensuring that all the governmental accounting standards, boards, regulations are being followed. There's reporting, different reporting standards, and the GASB is the one that sets what those standards are. They also make sure that there's proper segregation of duties. You don't really want the same people receiving cash as making the deposits and also writing the checks. And so you kind of want to separate duties as much as possible. Most of these duties would include the accounts payable, which is paying all the bills of the city in a timely fashion. Payroll, of course, paying the employees of the city. And then putting together all the documents that are needed to complete the audit by an independent auditor. The independent auditor is the person that comes in, examines all the records of the city. They will usually do some testing and making sure that things like our accounts receivables are what they say they are. So they'll possibly send out some confirmations that say, do you owe the city on this date? Did you owe the city this much money for water or for vehicle stickers or whatever? Just to make sure that those balances are correct. And in a way, the same way, they'll send them out to the vendors and say, at this point, did the city owe you this much money, or was it more or less? So, and then if something comes back wrong, they can also reconcile it with them. So sometimes a check will be crossing in the mail and it didn't get received by the vendor until, the 3rd of the month, but on the 30th of the month, they're showing it's open, but we mailed it on the 30th of the month. So, so there's always a little bit of that. Some additional duties specific to taxing bodies are working on the appropriations for the entire city, which is basically that says, here's how much money we're expecting or hoping is going to come in, and here's what we're going to use that money for and spend it on. And in direct relation to that, of course, is putting together the tax levy every year, which is basically our ask for how much money we're going to get from property taxes and other, from property taxes, basically. A lot of our property tax bills, as you may know, a very small percentage of it comes to the city. Most of it goes to things like schools for the most part. And then there's some other county places that it goes to and park districts and stuff like that. So our portion is a small portion of the entire property tax bill. And then as the kind of the elected person that sort of oversees that function is the treasurer. And the treasurer is the custodian of all the funds that belong to the city and is responsible to ensure that the finance department has the funds needed to run the city. So as part of that, the treasurer is issuing receipts for the money received and files copies of those with the clerk, as well as issuing money only on warrants or bonds duly signed by the president or mayor and clerk. So so basically, the treasurer needs to make sure that there's separate accounts for the taxes that are levied for a specific purpose. So there's some bond funds. Sometimes there's special assessment funds like the business development district. Those monies come in from the state and they go into a specific account that's specifically to be used for that purpose. So sometimes there's some levies for bond funds, and then that needs to go directly into there. Each TIF that is part of the city the money needs to be put into the specific TIF fund. And then if there's special funds for other things that the city council decides to set up, then those funds need to be made sure that they go into the correct place. The treasurer is also the custodian of the police pension fund and the firefighters pension fund. And under oath, the treasurer must make a monthly report showing the state of the treasury and its remaining balance as of the date of the report. So that's the monthly report that is presented to the city council. It basically shows what the cash was at the beginning of the month, all the cash that came into each account, all the cash that went out of the account, and then the ending balance as of the end of the month. And of course, and most importantly, the treasurer is prohibited from making personal use of any municipal funds in their possession. So that means they can't go out and buy a car with funds that come in from the city. So for themselves, any spending needs to be approved by the corporate authority, which would be the city council, and approved by the mayor and signed off on by the clerk.
In the finance department, there are three employees. We have the finance director, we have the payroll clerk, and the accounts payable clerk. And we also have a consultant accountant that helps with bank reconciliation and stuff. So there's basically four people that run the finance department that are the community development department oversees several areas. So the building safety, code enforcement, health, the health department to inspect restaurants and whatnot, and planning and zoning, and economic development. Today, we're just going to concentrate on the economic development portion because that's handled by his name is Howard Kapari, and he's on the second floor in City Hall right now. And Tom, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that for now.
Sure. So in an ideal world, you would have some city planners and also some community development people who would work together to try and attract as much business and economic development for the city as possible. Unfortunately, our budget is very lean, so we do have Howard, who's very knowledgeable and has done that in other cities. He's been developing a robust program to try and attract and retain businesses, and then hopefully attract residents to our community. Blue Island has a lot of things at its disposal to try and accomplish this. There are several public and private entities in the Chicago area that offer services to improve our city, including the South Suburban Land Bank, the Southwest Conference of Mayors and Managers, and the Center for Neighborhood Technology, the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning, and the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunities. So CNT and I believe CMAP all worked together to put together the Blue Island Plan a number of years ago. The Center for Neighborhood Technology came back and did a little bit of work about 10 years later to sort of dust it off and see where we're at and see where we might be able to go with what we have. And so there is a Blue Island Plan, which is great. And we are doing our best to try and implement it. Some things are longer term goals than others. The South Suburban Land Bank is a someplace where property gets donated, and then donated or purchased by the land bank, and then they can put it up for sale or donate it to somebody else to help redevelop it and make it return it to a productive piece of property. So some things that I believe have gone through there are like the old nursing home went through that, I believe.
Yes.
And so that just helped get that back, or at least get it to be torn down so that it can be on the road to be put back into use. And I believe it was sold then by the city. It needs to be, they need to pay almost 40% of
80% of the assessed value.
80% of the assessed value.
And the main thing is we want to get that property back on the tax rolls, so to help
Exactly.
further our development. So yeah.
So there are some other things that I think Bill's going to talk about too that are also available to individual businesses that might look to open up a business here in town.
Yeah, so just probably those follow up a little bit real quick on Tom's talk about what we've been doing over the years. I've been at Alderman for about 3.5 years, and prior to that, I was chair of Plan Commission, which was my first kind of insight into the city. And very interesting time. Learned a lot about what community development is all about and how important it is to our city. As Tom says, we run pretty lean. Howard is an excellent resource for us to have. We're fortunate to have him, but there's only one Howard, so he's got a lot to do. We do the city is very interested in attracting new business, and we make a real effort to make sure that we make it our process is as welcoming and as open as it can be, and yet at the same time we are aware that it's very important that we also protect Blue Island to make sure that we don't have businesses come in that just wouldn't be good for the city. And so there's a bit of a balancing act there, but we really work awfully hard to accommodate any legitimate business that wants to come in and help them understand what our rules are, and also work with them where they may need some help on an issue that not every business is a cookie cutter. So sometimes you have to help a business provided that there's a benefit to the city for doing so. And so that's where the whole process comes together that the city has. It's a little complex, but that's just kind of how cities work. We have the Plan Commission, we have the Zoning Board of Appeals, we have our Community Development Department, which has a building department, and all of those are gates that businesses need to go through, or in many cases need to go through when they want to start or make a significant change in Blue Island. But at the same time, I think everybody's very sensitive to the fact that, especially right now, that time, it's a lean time, and we need to, be sensitive to the fact that businesses are everybody's facing challenges right now. So we all got to face them together and work together. So I think there's a good understanding within the city about that. And, the city plan that we developed, I was closely involved, I would say, in the development of the original city plan. Golly, it's been 15 or more years ago. And as Tom says, it's still a good document. It provides a vision for the city for how it can be successfully developed. Blue Island is a unique town in so many ways, and we have so many assets in terms of our proximity to transportation, right, the beautiful architecture of the city, our trees, the fact that we're located along the canal. There's a lot of really great things about the town that are how would I say, protected and promoted by these parts of the city. So there is a mechanism in place to help the city, and I've seen it work fairly effectively. And I would say maybe as an example in particular is on Western Avenue, which is our primary commercial district. It's been important that as it's gone through a lot of change, that we also maintain basic standards to make sure that it's an attractive place.
Right.
And so as an example, we have requirements for signage that the businesses are required to follow. And those can be challenging sometimes for a business to understand, but when we work with them and help them understand why everyone is asked to please follow the same standard so that, we don't have a lot of garish signage or maybe your view into this, the view of the police department into a business isn't blocked or that kind of thing. Those are all important things that we do. And, we try to be, I think the city tries to be fair and even handed about it and is generally pretty successful. And so, it's a challenge sometimes to work on those things, but they're important things. And the city, I think, is pretty diligent with our limited resources to managing those issues.
You mentioned about signage and whatnot. Would you talk about the facade grant improvement, the business district tax, and kind of what's available to businesses up and down the street?
That's a Tom issue. I'll let him. He's
Okay, Tom.
involved, so I'll let
Yeah.
him do. That's good news.
Yes, we passed a tax, 1% tax. That's an add-on to the sales tax. So, and it's in the business development district, which runs from 119th Street all the way to 135th Street on Western Avenue, and includes Old Western Avenue as well. So, any businesses that you go to, you're paying a 1% tax additional above the regular sales tax that you would normally pay outside that. There's also a part that goes from Greenwood Avenue down to Division. Does it go to Division or Chatham?
Pretty close to Division. Yeah, it does actually.
On Vermont Street.
Correct.
And there's a little section on 127th as well, where there's some businesses there that could take advantage of it.
Right.
So that 1% tax comes separately from the state, and we need to make sure that that gets put into an account, a special account, which we do. And every payment goes into that special account. Those funds can only be used for improvements in that district.
Right.
So one of the things that we did start was a facade improvement program for businesses on Western Avenue in that business development district, where the city will pay 75% of the cost, up to $7,500 of an improvement. So if somebody wants to get a new sign or a new awning or replace old windows, if they want to do some tuck pointing and improvements on the front of their building, it's basically got to be something that you can see from Western Avenue or from the streets, the offside streets as well, because we're trying to encourage the businesses to take pride in their buildings and also to help make the whole area better, look better. And to that end, we added some planters this year up north of 127th. We're getting some garbage cans delivered hopefully before the end of the year. That'll be placed north of 127th and south of the canal. And we're going to have some on Old Western as well. And then next year, I think there's more plans for more planters and then probably more garbage cans as well. So so that is part of the business development type stuff.
Yeah.
The business facade thing is a separate thing that each person can, and the application's right online. You can download it, fill it out, turn it in. If you're in a historic district or historic property, it's got to go through the Historic Preservation Commission and get a certificate of appropriateness. And then it would go through community development. And then you would do your improvements if it's approved, and then you would get the funds approved from financing, and you'll get a check.
Yeah.
So it's a great program, and it's helped out a lot of businesses uptown do some nice things.
Yeah. There's a couple other things that I wanted to point out that are tools that the city can use to incentivize local development. That's the TIF funds. We kind of talked a little bit about that, and basically, very, very briefly, they freeze the value of the property. Any kind of increment can be used for redevelopment agreements or infrastructure improvements. One of the nice things that people don't really realize or take advantage of too much is we're part of the enterprise zone, CalSag enterprise zone, where any kind of building materials or sales tax or any sales tax on any building materials or supplies you need to improve your business, it's tax exempt. So that's kind of a nice thing. Also, if you have a property that is going to, and this is very common. So like at the new Family Dollar that we have on 127th and Western, you get a real estate tax break called a Class 8 or a 6B, where they kind of reduce your sales, your property tax, so that you can invest in the community, and we can, as a city, realize increased sales tax and whatnot. Another one too that we have is you go through some towns and you see abandoned buildings where the windows are all broken and whatever. We have abandoned property program where we get grant money to help make our town look decent, so people will want to come and invest in the community and develop it further. So anyway, that pretty much has everything that I wanted to talk about. You guys have anything else you want to talk about tonight?
I might just, maybe say as a part of this whole discussion that we've had, having been alderman for 3.5 years now, and have learned a few things, that the functioning of the city is an important one, to say the least. And there is a structure that we operate through, and it's designed to protect everyone, citizens, businesses, school kids, whatever. And sometimes it can seem a bit cumbersome, and sometimes it is a bit cumbersome. But for the most part, it's important that, and I learned this on Plan Commission a couple of times the hard way, that it's really important to follow the process that we have set up. It's been set up over a long period of time and through hard lessons that have been learned. And what it does is it permits any proposal, any idea for improvement or betterment that comes through, to run through a number of folks who each one has a different interest and a different perspective, and to be able for them to have their input in an orderly way, and to make often a good idea better, perfect it, and sometimes to everyone probably to mutually agree that maybe it isn't such a good idea. So it can take a little while, and it can be a little frustrating. And I hear, constituents sometimes express some frustration. Well, why couldn't we just get this done? And because whatever it is seems like common sense, but I've learned that is an important process. It's important to respect it. And so what might seem a bit cumbersome at times is there for a reason. And for the most part, it works pretty well. And it just might seem a little frustrating if you're watching it happen from the outside.
Right.
I would just like to add too that Blue Island is a very old city, and when it was built, there weren't cars.
Right.
It was there was not the kind of traffic that we're having to deal with all the time. And then when cars did start to come out, a house might have one car or two cars. Now it's everybody who can drive has a car, so
Right.
it's added a lot to our road usage. It's added a lot to parking issues, and we hear about the parking issues and we understand it, but then we also hear about vacancies on Western Avenue, and you want those filled, and then so it's kind of a delicate balance that you have to try and deal with when some of these businesses come in, and sometimes you try to. You basically have to end up doing what you feel is best for the city. Do you want this big albatross of a building empty, or do you want it filled with something that seems like it's going to be good? Yeah. Yes, it's going to cause some parking problems. We will try and fix them as best we can, but knowing that there's limitations just in the city, and that's just some problems with the way the city was developed, which is how it was developed in the 1800s. It was completely different than Orland, that was built up in the 60s and 70s when everyone had a car. So it's just a completely different type of thing, and you kind of need to keep that in mind too, because sometimes that causes delays for businesses, right? Because we're trying to alleviate parking issues or potential issues with them, and sometimes we're successful and sometimes we're not.
And that's part of the charm of the city, that we are so close. I mean, that it is. And I mean, it's you're right. When the city was platted, there was it was horse and buggy days, and you look at Orland, like you say, and they all have driveways and garages and, much bigger lots. But yeah, so but that is, I think that's part of the charm of the city myself. But
I do too. But it does present problems.
You have your heartache, your
growth.
Someday, if you want to see something really interesting and Randy doesn't have anything better to do, he can roll out some of the maps that he has from
Oh, they're very interesting.
it was really something how it developed. Yeah.
Exactly. All right. Well, I guess the takeaway from today is that we're pretty much there's a lot of moving parts to run a city, and we've just started to touch on the nuts and bolts of it. Next week we're going to be talking about my office, city clerk's office, and the rest of the community development, the building department. So we'll look forward to seeing you guys next week. And if you have any questions or comments, please, by all means, and go on to the YouTube channel and like the channel and subscribe so we can you can see when we are going to be on next.